Last night I was at a classmate's house working on a group project that's due tomorrow. I live in an apartment in the town where our university is located, and my classmate lives at his parents' house in the foothills just outside of town. In order to get to the house, you have to drive along a relatively secluded, narrow 2-lane road for about 5 to 6 miles. We started working on the project around 6 p.m., and I ended up hanging around for a while after we finished working. So I left his house pretty late, around 11, and started down the road back toward town. I didn't realize how tough it would be to navigate at night. There were no streetlights, and the road was unkempt and riddled with potholes. On top of that, I had no cell service, so I had to drive very slowly to make sure I didn't blow out one of my tires, especially since I'd used my spare a couple of weeks earlier. I figured I was about 3 miles from the house when I rounded a tight corner and saw a pickup truck with a camper shell parked diagonally across the road. The way it was positioned completely blocked my path, and I couldn't drive around it because there was a gully on both sides of the road. The only option I had was to back up to a pull-off I'd passed earlier so I could turn my car around. At first I couldn't see inside the cab, but when I switched on my high beams I saw a man slumped over in the driver's seat, his head resting against the steering wheel as if he'd been knocked out in an accident. I immediately sensed something was wrong. The fact that his truck had just coincidentally come to rest in a position that totally blocked the road was a huge red flag for me. I'd heard stories about people pretending to be injured or unconscious in the road to lure unsuspecting drivers out of their cars so they could rob them. I decided fuck this shit and turned back toward my classmate's house to explain what was going on. I threw the car into reverse, my eyes darting between the rearview mirror and the truck. I saw I was almost to the pull-off where I could turn around. When I looked back, my heart skipped about 5 beats. The man who had been slouched over in the driver's seat was now walking toward my car at a hurried pace, while a few other men jumped out of the camper shell and started moving toward me as well. I panicked and accelerated backward into the pull-off, which messed up the undercarriage of my car pretty badly. As I shifted into drive, the guy was already at my passenger side door tugging on the handle, which, thank the Lord, was locked. I only caught a brief glimpse of him, but his face looked scabbed and leathery. Definitely a meth head or some kind of drug abuser. I sped away and didn't slow down until I reached the house, constantly checking my rearview mirror to see if they were following me. Thankfully, they weren't. When I got back, I explained what had happened to my classmate and we called the cops. I was grateful that his parents were kind enough to let me stay the night. They didn't find anyone on the road matching the description, but I filed an incident report, and they told me they'd be on the lookout for similar vehicles or suspicious activity. But holy shit, I'm still so shaken up over it. I keep getting the same adrenaline rush I felt when I saw that guy charging at me every time I think about it. One time I went to a bar with one of my friends. I had just turned 21, so I hadn't been to many bars up to that point. My friend had been drinking on the way there, so he was already pretty drunk when we arrived. When I sat at the bar, a cute girl came up and started talking to me and my friend. She said her name was Candace, and I noticed she had really bright red hair. I assumed she'd dyed it. It was pretty, but definitely unnatural. This girl was flirting with both me and my friend. She could tell my friend was already very drunk. To be honest, I played along like I was drunk too, since it seemed to be working for him. I wasn't sure if she was just trying to get free drinks, so I told her we didn't have much money. She offered to buy us drinks instead. She kept buying us drinks, and I started to get confused about who she actually liked, me or my friend. My friend went to the bathroom, but before he came back, he was kicked out by the bouncers for being too drunk. Candace and I went outside with him. She kept telling him to go home with her, but he was so out of it he could barely respond. I told her he was too drunk and that I couldn't let him go anywhere. I didn't want him waking up hungover in some random house with no car and no idea what had happened. Candace kept pushing it, saying she would take care of him, but I told her no because I had to stay with him. I was more sober than he was, and he was my responsibility. I told her the only way he was going anywhere was if I tagged along. I assumed she thought I was jealous or cock-blocking, but my friend could barely stand and had already lost interest in Candace at that point. She immediately started flirting with me instead and offered to get my friend a taxi to take him home, saying we could go to her place alone. At this point, I'd had a few drinks and was pretty buzzed, so I agreed. We got my friend into the taxi and then walked to her car. I stumbled slightly on the way. "Wow, you're pretty drunk, huh?" she said with a smile as she held onto my arm. "Yeah," I replied. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt a little shy and anxious. Everything was happening too easily and it made me uneasy. We got into her car and started driving down the street. "Want to stop at the liquor store and get some more to drink?" "I'll buy it, so don't worry about paying," she offered. I didn't want to drink any more than I already had. I was already buzzed and wanted to be able to carry myself throughout the rest of the night. Sometimes I make myself look stupid when I'm drunk, so I didn't want to ruin anything with Candace more than I already had earlier by telling her my friend was too drunk. I told her I was already drunk enough, but she insisted. I didn't want to seem lame, so I told her to get me a pint of liquor with some apple juice to chase it. She went into the store and came out with a lot more than just a pint. I assumed she wanted to drink more too, which was why she got a fifth instead of a pint. During the car ride, we passed the bottle back and forth, but she only took tiny sips. I tried to do the same, but she kept handing me the bottle and telling me to drink. Somehow I managed to finish my apple juice and started pretending to drink the liquor by spitting it into the empty apple juice bottle. Before she noticed, I tossed the bottle full of liquor out the window. I didn't want her to know I was acting drunker than I really was. She actually believed I was sloppy drunk when I was just buzzed. I took a couple more sips of liquor and finished the bottle. During the car ride, I called her the wrong name a few times to see how she'd react. She didn't react at all. She just kept letting me call her Carla without correcting me. For some reason, that made me think she'd lied about her name from the start. When we got to her house, I pretended to trip and stumble into her front door. She helped me walk inside by holding me up. She opened her front door, which was unlocked, and we walked in. She closed the door behind us and then locked it. I thought that was strange, but assumed she didn't want anyone walking in on us. I told her I had to use the bathroom. I went in, locked the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. Something just felt off. I felt myself getting more drunk from finishing the bottle earlier. I turned on the sink to make some noise and made myself puke up the liquor I'd drunk. Then I flushed, went to the sink, and started drinking tap water out of my hands to sober up. I didn't want to be drunk, but I still wanted to hook up with Candace, so I decided to keep pretending to be drunk. I turned the sink off and I could hear her talking to someone. "He's drunk as hell, he can barely stand up, you do it." Who was she talking to, and do what? I walked out of the bathroom and into the living room. The moment I stepped into the living room, I saw her walking into another room. All I could see was the back of her head. That strange, very bright red hair go into another room. I didn't see her face or anything. I just saw her kind of walk fast into the room. The living room was pretty dark. "Hey, where you going?" I slurred like I was drunk. She walked back into the dark living room and up to me. "Let's go in my room," she said. I looked at her bright red hair and then into her eyes. They were different. Her face was different. It was another girl with the same hair. That's when I realized it was another girl wearing the same wig. It had been a wig the whole time. She'd switched places with the girl from earlier for some reason. My heart felt like it stopped, but I tried to act like I hadn't noticed. I smiled a little and told her I just needed to use the bathroom one more time, apologizing for being so drunk. She said, "It's fine, just hurry up in there." I went into the bathroom and locked the door. A moment later, I heard her whisper something to someone again. This time, I think I heard a man's voice whisper back. I honestly didn't concentrate on exactly what she said. Something sketchy was going on, and I had to get out of that house. I opened the bathroom window, jumped straight out, and ran faster than I've ever run in my life. I didn't look behind me or anything. I just ran through the backyard, jumped the fence, cut through someone else's yard, hit a road, and ran toward the main road. I kept running until I saw a 24-hour convenience store. I ran inside and stood right at the front of the store, directly in front of the camera. Then I called a taxi and went home. I tried to think about what happened that night. What were she, or they, planning? Why did she give me a fake name? Why was she trying to get my friend and me so drunk? I thought maybe it was a setup for a robbery, but she kept spending money on us. She kept buying us drinks and even paid for my friend's taxi. And most of all, why did she wear a wig that she later gave to another girl to wear? Who was she talking to? What did it mean? And what was in that room they were trying to lure me into? The next day after this incident, I went back to the house with a couple of friends to see just what was going on. Nobody was there, no cars, no people, nothing. Just an empty house. I ended up finding out that the house was a summer rental, and whoever those people were, they broke into that house and used it for only that night and never came back. I've had a stalker for about 4 years. He was never aggressive or sent me direct threats, so stubborn as I am, I did my best to ignore him and not give him the satisfaction of seeing me scared. To be honest, after a while, I wasn't even scared anymore since he almost never came close to me. I know being stalked can affect people severely, even in cases like mine, and that's totally valid. But I guess I just got lucky and was never really psychologically affected by it. His stalking behavior mostly consisted of sending me letters and gifts, like photos of my apartment building from the outside or things he dug out of my trash can. I called the police many times, but they were never able to, or really tried to, catch or identify him. About 3 weeks ago, I discovered a Reddit community and thought that people might want to know what it's like to have a stalker. Since I barely use any social media aside from Reddit and have no personally identifying information there, I didn't think he'd ever see it. One person even asked, "Does he know you're putting him on blast on Reddit?" And I answered, maybe. Maybe it would make him angry, maybe he'd be turned on. Don't know, don't care. Well, I know the real answer now. He did see it and he did not like it. Like I said, he was never aggressive and never came close to me. The closest I know of was when he sent me a picture of myself unlocking my apartment door, taken from the corner of the steps. But I consider myself a pretty vigilant person, and I think he might have hidden a camera there instead of taking the photo himself. I'm pretty sure I would have noticed him if he had been there. I don't know how he found out about the community, but he did. The next week was quiet. No letters, and I didn't see him anywhere. Then he started leaving me letters again, this time with printed out questions and my answers from the community. He also left a long, hateful letter about my boyfriend, referencing an issue I had posted about on a Reddit community. His letters had never been that hateful before, though he'd never seemed happy about my boyfriend. He wrote about how I should share the spotlight with him, since I got so much attention thanks to him. A few days later I got a gift, but this time he didn't leave it in my mailbox or at my car like he usually did. This time he left it inside the apartment building right in front of my door. I didn't take it inside my apartment, but opened it outside. It was a pretty big box, which was also unusual, and it was taped shut. As I'm typing it out, I realized that wasn't a good idea at all and could have ended badly for me. But luckily, he didn't send me a bomb or anything. He did, however, send me several zip ties, a roll of painter's tape, the kind used to tape off walls, nothing you could use to restrain someone, a TV remote with most of the buttons picked off, a pack of Band-Aids with a few made to look used, and a framed picture of me. I could tell the picture was taken just a few days earlier. My boyfriend had been next to me in the original photo, but he'd been cut out. The frame was shattered, and the package was full of glass shards, clearly more than what could have just fallen from the frame. It looked like they'd been intentionally mixed in with the crumpled newspaper that was stuffed inside to keep everything in place. I called the police right away and handed everything over to them. This time, they actually seemed more concerned and told me they'd have patrol cars pass by more frequently. He didn't show up or leave any letters or gifts for about a week and a half. But then, about 8 days ago, it started again. I found letters in my mailbox where he wrote about how he'd wasted his time on me, how I hadn't appreciated his efforts, and how he'd been wrong about me being special. 5 days ago, I left my apartment in the morning and heard a crunching sound as I stepped on my doormat. He had put broken glass under it during the night. I was in a hurry to get to work, so I planned to have my boyfriend call the police later. But when I got to my car, I saw it had been vandalized. The sides were scratched, the light smashed, and the windshield had a phrase painted across it. "It's time soon." I went back inside and called the cops myself. They found the same phrase written on a note hidden under the doormat. This time, they really took me seriously, probably because I was furious and made that very clear. I did, however, have a dash cam in my car, and it caught everything. The police took the footage as evidence, even though the video quality wasn't great. I had already given them photos of him before that were just as clear, but they'd said it wasn't enough. This time, they told me they'd look into it further and promised to send more patrol cars again. Then it was quiet for 2 more days. Until 2 days ago, someone rang our doorbell just after 4 a.m. My boyfriend and I got up, both hesitant, but I saw blue lights outside. Just as I stood, I heard them shouting, "This is the police, please open the door." They told us they'd been called by one of our downstairs neighbors, who had come home from his night shift about an hour earlier and heard someone else enter the building right after him before the door shut. My neighbors know about my situation, and I've asked them not to let strangers into the building. This neighbor went into his apartment and looked through the peephole. We have motion-activated lights in the stairway, so he waited to see if they would turn back on. They did. Then he saw a middle-aged man walking upstairs. Above him there are only my boyfriend and me, and a single mom with 3 kids, who definitely wouldn't be getting visitors at 3 a.m. So he called the police. They came and found my stalker halfway up the stairs, just 1 floor below my apartment. He should have been able to see the police cars since there's a small window up there and the lights were flashing. But either he missed them, or he wanted to get caught. They found a pocket knife on him, and he confessed to being my stalker right away. He's finally caught. It took 4 years, a provocative Reddit post, and 1 very vigilant, caring neighbor. But they finally got him. For now, at least. He's facing several charges, and I've collected every single piece of evidence from the past 4 years. I don't know what kind of outcome to expect, but for now I finally have some peace. I was 13 years old at the time, I'm 22 now, and on vacation with my parents in Turkey. We were staying at an all-inclusive hotel and having a great time enjoying the holiday. The hotel was full of tourists from different countries. There was this one guy around 20 years old who kept staring at me for a while. I felt uncomfortable and decided to ask him how he was doing. Wrong choice. For the next few days, everywhere I went, he suddenly appeared too. He wasn't flirting or trying to talk, just lurking nearby for hours, silently watching me. There was something really strange about him, and I just knew I shouldn't be alone with him. I was still young, so my parents didn't want to leave me alone in a foreign country, which meant he couldn't really bother me. But one night there was some entertainment at the hotel that I eventually found boring. I told my parents I wanted to go back to our room and that I'd see them in the morning. I left and walked toward the elevator. What I didn't know was that the guy who'd been watching me for days saw me leave and decided to follow me. When I stepped into the elevator and saw him coming in right after me, fear shot through me. He looked at me silently with a sinister smile. This is it, I thought. Rape, assault, or maybe even worse. Just before the elevator doors closed, someone suddenly stuck their boot between them to stop them from shutting. I'm not kidding. All I could see at first was the boot. The doors slid back open and it was my dad. He'd noticed that the creepy guy left at the exact same time I did and didn't trust it. He looked the guy straight in the eye and simply said, "Hello," before taking me back to our hotel room. To this day, I'm so thankful for that rescue. I don't even want to imagine what could have happened if he hadn't shown up. This happened about 10 years ago when I was in my early 30s. I was standing in line at the local pharmacy to pick up my prescriptions. It's a small town and I'm a regular there, so the staff knows me on sight. I was behind a couple of people in line, with a few others standing behind me. I kept feeling a tickle in my hair at the back of my head, but every time I turned around, the man behind me was a few steps back, looking down at the floor. This happened several times before I reached the front of the line. The pharmacist then told me she wanted to talk to me about my medication in the consultation room. I thought that was strange because we both knew I'd been on this medication for years and would be for life. Nothing had changed. When I got to the consultation room and closed the door, she entered from the door on the other side that connected to the pharmacy. She told me that the man behind me had been stepping forward, sticking his nose into my hair to smell it, then stepping back and looking at the floor. That shook me badly. Such creepy, invasive behavior, especially in a small town like ours. The pharmacy staff insisted I stay in the room until the guy was distracted by another employee. Then they had a security guard walk me to my car and watch me drive off, to make sure I left before Hair Sniffer came out and saw what I was driving or which direction I went. I still use that pharmacy, and some of the same people still work there. I'll always be grateful they took the initiative to make sure I was safe that day.